We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Aleph Amud Aleph and Meseches Shevuos. This is Shevuos Daf 41a. On the previous Amud, the Gemara brought a statement of Rav Nachman that we give the person a Shevuos Heses when he completely denies that he owes the money. But there were two versions in terms of whether Rav Nachman's statement was going on the first case of the Mishnah or was it going on the second case of the Mishnah. The first case of the Mishnah is when the person says, "You owe me a money," and the defendant, he simply denies it. He says he doesn't owe the money. And so then Rav Nachman would say, even though he's potter, he doesn't have to pay in that case. Nevertheless, he has to take a Shevuos Heses. Again, that's a Shevuot D'Rabbanan. If it's going on the case of the Seifa, in the Seifa, the person says, "You owe me a money," and the person at first, he admits, he says, "I do owe you the money." Then the next day, when the person wants the money, when he wants that money, so then the person says, "I already actually paid you back." Again, it's the same situation. The person is exempt from paying in that case, and then Rav Nachman would be saying, but he has to take a Shevuos Heses. But the Gemara notes, "Uman demasni la seifa." But the one who understands that Rav Nachman's statement was going on that end case, the case where he at first admitted, but then he said that he already paid back. So hachahu deika drara de mamona over here. So then we would administer the shvuah because there's already clearly some money between them. There's a monetary case over here. There was an admission that at some point in time he did owe him the money. Aval hasan, but over there, meaning in the reish, in the first case, where the person says, "You owe me money," and he simply says, "No, I don't." So the leka drara de mamona, there you don't even have a monetary case between them. So lo, so then no, then we would not say that there is a Shevuos Heses. And the Gemara continues and asks, "Mai ika ben shvuah d'oraisa l'shvuah d'Rabbanan?" What's the practical difference between the shvuah d'oraisa, the shvuah from the Torah, and the shvuah d'Rabbanan, which is the Shevuos Heses that we just mentioned? Rashi explains, "Shvuah d'oraisa haba b'mixas hatayna." Again, that's the case of moed b'mixas, where you take a shvuah. And shvuah d'Rabbanan had Rav Nachman. The shvuah d'Rabbanan is the Shevuos Heses. Let's say the person is not moed b'mixas, he totally denies it. Then he takes the shvuah d'Rabbanan. But what is the practical difference again between the shvuah d'oraisa and the shvuah d'Rabbanan? And the Gemara says, "Ika beinayu," the difference between them is meipach shvuah. The difference between them is meipach shvuah, which Rashi explains to mean as follows: meipach shvuah im amar hanitva letovei. Let's say the defendant says to the claimant, he shava v'tol. He says, "I don't want to take the shvuah, but I want you to take the shvuah in order to collect. I'm giving you the option to take the shvuah and to collect." So the question is, do we allow that to happen? Do we say that the shvuah now goes from the defendant instead to the claimant? As the Gemara now explains, b'doraisa lo mafchinan. When we're talking about the shvuah d'oraisa, so there we don't say that. There the person is not able to say, the defendant doesn't say, "You take the shvuah and collect." But by shvuah d'Rabbanan, but when it comes to shvuah d'Rabbanan, mafchinan, so then we actually would flip the shvuah from the defendant to the claimant. And the Gemara continues and asks, "Ulamar bar Rav Ashi," according to Mar bar Rav Ashi, the Amar, because Mar bar Rav Ashi says b'doraisa nami mafchinan, that when it comes to the shvuah d'oraisa as well, also mafchinan shvuah, also by the d'oraisa shvuah, we say that the defendant again can say that it's the claimant who's going to take the shvuah. So he holds mafchinan both by the d'oraisa and by the d'Rabbanan. So again, the question is, ma'ika bein d'oraisa l'd'Rabbanan? According to Mar bar Rav Ashi, what's the difference between the shvuah d'oraisa and the shvuah d'Rabbanan? And the Gemara says to that, ika beinayu, the difference is mechas l'nichse, whether we're going to descend to his property. Rashi explains, mechas l'nichse, emamar eini nishba ve'eini meshalim. Let's say the person says, "I don't want to take the oath and I don't want to pay." So yordan l'nechasa v'nosin l'zeh. Is Bezin going to go and actually go down to his property, so to speak, in order to take it from one party and give it to the other? That's the difference between shvuah d'oraisa and shvuah d'Rabbanan, as the Gemara now explains. B'd'oraisa nachtinon l'nichse. When it comes to the shvuah d'oraisa, let's say the person who's moed b'mixas refuses to take the shvuah, so then we say he has to pay, and the Bezin will even go get his property in order to force him to pay. But b'd'Rabbanan, but by the shvuah d'Rabbanan, if the person refuses, lo nachtinon l'nichse. So the Bezin is not going to go that far. They're not going to descend to his property. But the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yossi damar b'd'Rabbanan nami nachtinan l'nichse. According to Rabbi Yossi, who says that by d'Rabbanans as well, the Bezin will descend to his property. And where do we see that that is the sheet of Rabbi Yossi, the Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah Meseches Gittin, Metzias cheresh shota v'katan, let's say a cheresh, which is a deaf mute, or a shota, an imbecile, or a katan, a minor, let's say they find something, so really they're not able to make a kinyan on a d'oraisa level, but nevertheless, yesh bohem gezel memnei darchei shalom, shalom. Still, it's considered to be gezel, it's considered to be stealing if you take it from them, and that's because of darchei shalom, the ways of peace, for the betterment of the world. And Rabbi Yossi says gezel gomer. It's not just gezel mimnei darchei shalom, but it's actually really stealing. V'yomer Rav Chisda says gezel gomer midivreim. When Rabbi Yossi says it's gezel gomer, he does not mean to say that it's gezel on a doraisa level. He means to say that it's fully considered gezel, but on a drabonon level. And the Gemara says, well, lemay nafkamina. According to that, what's the difference between the Tana Kama and Rabbi Yossi? They both say that it's gezel on a drabonon level. What does Rabbi Yossi mean to add when he says gezel gomer? And so the Gemara says the nafkamina is l'hotzio b'dayon, and the difference is that whether we can take it out, whether the judges are going to descend to the property and take it and return it to the original owner. And so therefore you see that Rabbi Yossi is saying gezel gomer, he means to say, even though this is something that is only midrabanan, still the bezdin is going to take the property and give it back to the cheresh otav v'katan. You see that he holds even by derabonans nachtinon lenichsei. So again, the question is ma'ika bein doraisa l'derabonan. So according to Rabbi Yossi, what's the difference between shvua doraisa and shvua derabonan? And the Gemara answers ika beinayu. The difference is as follows: shekenegdo chashad al hashvua. Let's say you have a situation where the person is chashad al hashvua. He's somebody that's already suspect that he's going to take a false oath, so he really can't take an oath. So b'doraisa, when it comes to the doraisa shvua, shekenegdo chashad al hashvua afchinan leishvua v'samo ha'idach. So then, let's say that person is suspect, he can't take the shvua. So then we flip the shvua to the other party, and he's the one that takes the shvua. But b'derabonan, when it comes to shvua derabonan, takanti, the whole shvua is only a takana. The whole shvua is only derabonan. V'takanta l'takanta lo avdinan. We're not going to make a takana on a takana, and so there we are not going to say that we'll flip it to the other party. There we will simply say, if the person is chashad al shvua and he can't take the shvua, so he won't take the shvua and he will not have to pay. And Rashi explains, shekenegdo chashad, if he's suspect on taking a false oath, meaning hanitba chashad al shvua, meaning the defendant is suspect and he can't take the shvua. Utanan l'kamon, and we learn in the Mishnah later on, shetiknu chachamim sheishava hatovea v'yitol, that the chachamim instituted that the tovea, the claimant, should then take the shvua in order to collect. And the Gemara then said takantahi, when it comes to the shvuas heses, that's just a takon in the first place. Shvua atzma shel heses takantahi, the shvuas heses itself is a takana. V'takanta sheyehei tovea nishba v'notel, and another takana, that the claimant should be the one to take the shvua in order to collect. L'takanta heses shvua, to the other takana, that first takana of heses shvua, shelo ba all of ela b'takanas chachamim, even the shvua in the first place is only a takanas chachamim. So lo avdinan, that we're not going to do. We're not going to say that in this case the claimant should take the shvua. V'yafsid hatovea, so in this case the tovea will actually lose out below shum shvua, without taking any shvua. And the Gemara continues, Ul-Rabbanan depligi oled Rabbi Yossi, according to the Rabbanan who argue in Rabbi Yossi, the Amru, that they say, B'derabbanan lo nachtin l'nichsei, that by the Rabbanans we don't descend to his property. The Bezin does not go down to the property to force the person to pay what he owes. So ma'yavdinale, so what exactly do we do to the person? How does Bezin get the person to pay? And the Gemara answers, Meshamtinale, the Gemara answers that we excommunicate him. But the Gemara says that's essentially the same thing as descending to his property. Amar le Ravina le Ravashi, Ravina said to Ravashi, Hai nakte bekufse, that's like grabbing someone by his cluster. That's a euphemism for the male anatomy. The nishbike leglimehu, that's like grabbing someone and forcing him to give up his cloak. So that's essentially the same thing. And so the Gemara says, Elamai avdinale, rather, what do we do to him? Amar le said to him, Mishamtinan le, we excommunicate him at demoti zman nagde, until the time of getting the lashes arrives. V'nagdinan le, v'shavkinan le, and then we give him the lashes, and then we let him go. And Rashi explains, the pligi oled Rabbi Yossi, again the Rabbanan who argue in Rabbi Yossi, gavi metzias chereshot v'katan, by the case of metzias chereshot v'katan in the Mishnah Meseches Gittin. So the Gemara said, if you're going to excommunicate him forever, that's nakte lekovse delishbike leglimuhu, that's like grabbing someone by his cluster, forcing him to give up his cloak. As Rashi explains, ochaso beveitzav, again grabbing him beveitzav by his testicles, hatzluyim which hang from him, ad sheyiten lo talis shalav, until he gives him the talis, until he gives him the cloak, that's upon him. Kilomar, what the Gemara is saying, it's as if to say, Kavan de mishamtinon le liolam, if we're going to excommunicate him forever, ad delasively, until he gives it, so less loch lemechas lenichse adav mehai, there's no better example of descending to a person's property than that. And Rashi continues, ad demotis managde, so then the Gemara said that we're going to excommunicate him until the time of the lashes. Rashi says that means levasar tzlasen yomin, it means after 30 days. Kedamin, as we say, Rav man giraman demashi shamte derabona le tzlasen yomin, Rav would give lashes to somebody. Let's say there was an excommunication on a person for 30 days and he wasn't listening, so he would get lashes. And so over here again, there would be excommunication for 30 days. They would give lashes and then the case would be closed. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Papa says, Haiman da apik shtar al chavri. Let's say a person has a shtar against his friend to collect money from the person. V'yamar lei, and so the defendant, he says to him, Shtara paruahu, that's a shtar, but I already paid it, it's already paid up. So Amrin on lei, so then we say to him, Lav kol kaminach, you're not able to say that it's already paid. Zil shalim, you have to pay. If there's a shtar against you, you have to pay. V'yamamar l'shtabali, now let's say the defendant says, I want you to swear to me. He says to the claimant, you swear to me that it wasn't paid. So Amrin on lei, we actually say to him that he should swear. We actually take the Shevuot, and we say that it's the claimant who should take the Shevuot. And Rashi explains, "Ishtabali delo paratich." You swear to me that I didn't pay you. And again, in such a situation, Rav Papa says we will have the claimant. He's the one that will make the Shevuot. But the Gemara continues, Amar le Ravacha b'reidu Rava le Ravashi. Ravacha, the son of Rava, said to Ravashi, Uma bein zeh lepogem eshtaro. So then what's the difference between this case and the case of pogem eshtaro? Pogem eshtaro is a situation where the shtar is not as believable, as Rashi now explains. V'chima bein zeh shelo pogam shtaro. In this situation, there's really nothing wrong with the shtar. The person took out the shtar, and there's nothing that we can find, no reason to believe that the shtar has already been paid. Lepogem shtaro, but you can also have a case where the shtar is blemished, so to speak, where there's a reason not to trust the shtar. What would be a case like that? The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, hapogemes kesubasa. This is in ksubas. Let's say a woman is pogemes, she blemishes her ksuba, so lo tifra ela b'shvua. So there the halacha is that the ksuba is only paid if there's a shvua. Keitzad, how so? Haisa ksubasa elef zuz. So let's say the ksuba was 1,000 zuz. Here the woman is the one. She's holding the ksuba, so she's like the lender, so to speak. She's collecting the money. V'hu amar hiskabal ksubasech. Now he claims, I've already paid it. She's holding the document, but he says he already paid it. V'hi omeres. Now she says, lo hiskabalti elamona. I've only received a mana. So in this case, in a certain sense, she's blemishing the shtar because she's saying some of it was paid, and therefore the shtar is no longer as powerful. Why is she holding the shtar if some of it was paid? Maybe all of it was already paid. Ho'elu modis b'mana. So since she's admitting to a mana, pogemes a shtar ksubasa. She's really like blemished her shtar ksuba. V'lo tifra hashar ela b'shvu. And so the halacha then is that she can't collect the rest of it unless she takes an oath. So in this case, again, the person who's trying to collect is going to have to take an oath. The leka lemismach su ashtar. You can no longer rely on the shtar. The ikol lemeimar tfei kibla, because maybe you could say that she received more even than what she's claiming. V'hashta da'amrit mashbiin lo. And so therefore that's the question of the Gemara over here. If Rav Papa is now saying that even in a regular case where the shtar is not blemished, the shtar is not damaged, so to speak, we still say that if the defendant says, I want you to swear that I didn't pay you, and then the claimant has to take the shvua, so that's exactly the same. Ma yafe kocho mishim pagam eshtaro. How is this person any stronger than in a situation where the shtar is blemished? Here we have a situation where the person has a shtar which is not blemished, and we're making him take a shvua. So that's exactly the same as what we do by the, let's say, the wife with the ksuba, where the ksuba is blemished and she takes the shvua. So it doesn't seem to be any different. There really should be a difference between the two cases. And the Gemara continues, Amar Lei said back to him, Hasam over there, Afal gav de lo toin ihu tanin lei. Even if he doesn't make any claim, we claim on his behalf. Meaning by the case of pogam eshtaro, we actually make the person take a shvua even if the defendant doesn't ask for the shvua. But anon hacha amrinon lei. Over here though, in a situation where there's nothing wrong with shtar, we say to him as follows, Zil shalim lei. Our first thing to say is, you have to pay him because he has a shtar. V'itoyin v'yamar. Now if the defendant gets up and claims and says, Ishtabali, that you should swear to me that I didn't pay it, so then amrinon lei zil ishtabali. So then we say to him that you have to swear to him. Rashi explains, Hasam over there, gabe pagam eshtaro. In the case of pagam eshtaro, afagav de lo toin love ishtabali. Even though the borrower doesn't say you should swear to me, el omer paratach, he simply says I already paid you. Taninon le'anon, we make the claim on his behalf. V'amrinon lebal hashtar hishava. We tell the bal hashtar that he has to take a shvua. Again, that's in a situation of pagam shtaro. Now, if there's nothing wrong with the shtar, if there's no blemish, so to speak, so there we're going to say really initially we tell the defendant you have to pay. If the defendant then says I want the claimant to take the shvua, then we'll make him take the shvua. And the Gemara continues now, V'it surba me'rabbanan. Now, if the person is a surba me'rabbanan, he's a Torah scholar, so lo mashbi'inan lei. So then we actually don't make him take the shvua. Gemara says, how does that make sense? Amar le Rav Yemar le Rav Ashi. Rav Yemar said to Rav Ashi, Tzur b'mei Rabbanan mishaleach glima de inshe. Just because he's a Tzur b'mei Rabbanan, therefore he's able to take the garment of a person. Does that make any sense? Now suddenly he doesn't need to swear because he's a Tzur b'mei Rabbanan. And so instead the Gemara says, Ella, rather what it really means to say is lo mizdakekinon le ledine. And Rashi explains lo mizdakekinon le lehishava. We're not going to make him swear demichsi dechashtinon le, because then it looks like we suspect him and he's a Torah scholar, so that would not be appropriate. So he doesn't take a shvu in this case, v'lo ligvoslo, but also we're not going to have him collect either, because the defendant is saying that you should swear to me that I didn't already pay you, and so in this case, essentially, we'll dismiss the case and we will not make the defendant pay. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Mana li biyadcha v'chulu. Again, a person claims, you owe me a money. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Asi. Rav Yehuda says that Rav Asi says, Hamalves chaveru be'edim, one who lends money to his friend, and there are witnesses there at the time to witness the loan, tzarech leporo be'edim. So when the person pays back, he has to pay back in front of witnesses. He can't pay him back privately. He has to make sure that there are witnesses present at the time that he's paying back. And the Gemara continues, Ki amrisa kamei de Shmuel. This is Rav Yehuda talking. Rav Yehuda says, when I said this halacha over in front of Shmuel, Amar li, he said to me, Shmuel said to me, Yachol lomar lo paratich b'fnei ploni uploni. The defendant is able to say to the person claiming the money, I did pay you back, and there were witnesses. It was in front of so-and-so and so-and-so. V'halchu lahem lemedinas hayam, but they now left overseas. They went far away, and that actually would be a good claim, and the defendant would not be liable. And the Gemara continues, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Mona li biyarcha, again, a person says, you owe me a money. Amar lo hein, and the defendant says, yes, I owe you money. Lamachar, the next day, Amar lo teneuli, he says to him, give me the money that you owe me. And then he says, nesativ lach, he says, no, I already paid it to you. So potter, so in this situation, he's potter. In this situation, he's exempt. Essentially, he's like a kofar bakol. He's completely denying that he owes the money. But the Gemara asks, Vahacha, but over here, Kevon de tave be'edim, if he's making the claim from him with witnesses, Kiman de ozve be'edim dami, isn't that the same as lending with witnesses? V'katani potter, and yet over here, we're saying that he is exempt. Apparently, if this is a good claim, he can say that I paid you back, even though he didn't pay back in front of witnesses. Rashi explains, Nesativ lach potter. So if he says again, I already paid you back, then he's potter. Af mi shvuah, he's potter completely. He doesn't have to pay, he doesn't have to take a shvuah. Umiu shvuas heses ika. Rashi notes that there's a shvuas heses, there's a shvuah derabanan, but there is no shvuah on a doraisa level. And so the Gemara asks, V'ahacha, but over here, Kevon de tave be'edim, since he claimed from him, he said, you owe me money with witnesses, V'ho de lo b'fneim. The point over here is that the admission, when he said the day before, he said, yes, I do owe you money, he admitted to the person in front of witnesses. So that moment in time, Keman de ozve be'edim dami, that should be the same thing as if he lent him the money in front of witnesses, and therefore really when he pays back, he really should have to pay back in front of witnesses. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Aleph Amud Beis.